What is Western civilization? How do we define it? What does it really mean? If it's not religion, still have to make that case, then what is it? What are we fighting for? What is the positive that we are fighting for? And of course, is it worth it? But indeed, I would argue that Christianity undermines Western civilization. Western civilization or Christianity is the enemy. The founding fathers were men of the Enlightenment. They were part of the Republic of Letters. They were communicating with thinkers, and they were reading each other's books. And they wanted to build a country based on these principles. The principles of reason and individual rights, of reason and individualism, and political liberty as a consequence of the fact that each one of us can reason. So this is a civilization clearly worth saving. We know how to. Ayn Rand has given us the tools.
The Americans are now beginning a search for new principles, institutions, and constitutions. The Americans set out to revolutionize the idea of a constitution and the idea of government. The Americans are moving toward inventing what I said at the very beginning is the great result, consequence of the American Revolution, which is the idea of a written constitution as fundamental law. For those of us who are immigrants to the United States, the 4th of July has special meaning. Not only does it represent the birth of a free America, but it represents our personal rebirth as free men and women.
The reason much of France gravitated to the rhetoric of natural rights was because it justified tearing down what they wanted to tear down, but it did not represent a guide to what they wanted to build. Tearing down, even when what one wants to tear down ought to be torn down, is a dangerous motive. The American Revolution succeeded because it was an essentially positive movement. The founders wanted to end British rule, yes, but they wanted to replace it with something better, a rights-protecting government. The French Revolution devolved into terror, not because it was propelled by Enlightenment ideals, but because it was insufficiently propelled by Enlightenment ideals. It was not the ideals of reason, individualism, and individual rights that unleashed Robespierre and the sans-culotte mobs, but pre-Enlightenment and anti-Enlightenment ideas. What doomed the revolution was not the ideas of Locke and Montesquieu, but the tradition worship of Burke and the group worship of Rousseau. To put it in objectivist terms, the American Revolution produced the first nation in which each individual has a right to exist for his own sake. It was radical because that idea was and continues to be radical. It succeeded because the ideas that fueled it were and are true. America stands as a testament to the truth, righteousness, and vitality of Enlightenment ideals. But can that success endure? That depends. Just as the French Revolution could not succeed in a culture that did not value reason, individualism, and individual rights, the American Revolution's legacy depends on keeping those values alive today, here, now, in our time.
You needed a new morality to sanction this new way of life that the Enlightenment gave birth to. You needed a morality of selfishness. You needed a morality that grounds and justifies the pursuit of happiness. What the Enlightenment did was sweep aside, Yaron was talking about that it's a revolt and rebellion against religion. It swept aside the old religious virtues and brought into existence, again, for the first time, really in history, new virtues. It swept aside the traditional virtues of faith, hope, and charity, and it brought into existence new virtues, thought, production, trade. And these are the opposite of each of these. But this never got a full philosophic explanation, or anything close to a full philosophic explanation of here's a new code of morality for which these are the central virtues. This is what it means to live, to pursue the good, to be on the side of morality. It never got this. What it needed was what Ayn Rand brought into existence. One of the things she says there is that I am primarily the creator of a new code of morality. And it's the code of morality that the Enlightenment needed but never got.
In a culture, in a society that is sick, in a society that is ripe for an authoritarian takeover, it doesn't matter that the current resident of the White House is not a fascist. This just buys us time. And we have to make use of this time and to fight. And how do we do this? Well, we fight for the ideas that are the opposite of the ideas of fascism. We fight for freedom, for your right to live your life or whatever you think. To fight for truth and reason. Remember, truth and reason are the disinfectants of fascism. They're the kryptonite of fascism. We who understand what actually made America great, what actually made America special, we are a minority. And I understand how this can be dispiriting. We're like the 300 Spartans in Thermopylae. We are facing hordes of enemies. So I think we should just stand our ground and fight.
And why does due process matter? Well, it matters because due process is a legal safeguard that protects the individual from the arbitrary whims of the state. It is literally what stands between you and authoritarianism. Without due process, your rights only exist up to the point when the government decides that you are a gang member and decides that you have to be sent to a prison in a third country to be there potentially forever. It is the principle that mandates that the government has to prove that the power delegated to it by we the people is being used correctly. It's the government has to prove that it has a reason to deprive someone of their freedom, of their rights. And it doesn't just prove it to the person they are detaining. It proves this to everyone, to every citizen in America, that this power is being used correctly. And the system, the race that you see, the people just en masse being deported, that is not Trump. That is what Congress has told the immigration agencies to do. That is the actual law. Again, many things that Trump is doing are, in my opinion, illegal, lawless. But a lot of them are what the system has told him to do. Peaceful people that came here to build a life deserve an opportunity to be here legally, to trade with Americans. That is it. Please reflect on this. Is this the society you want to live in? Does this society right now reflect the values of the Enlightenment that, as we learned this week, that really enabled? It's the culmination of the Enlightenment is America. Do you even recognize America anymore when you see on TV the ICE raids, the way that they are being treated, the rhetoric coming from this administration?
A rational foreign policy minimizes the possibility of war, not as its primary goal, but as a consequence of its vigorous defense of liberty. It prevents war by conveying to America's antagonists the credible warning that any aggression on their part will be met with overwhelming force on our part. The jihadists who launch terrorist attacks against us, from the airplane hijackers of 9/11 to the Houthis in Yemen today, are not simply a hodgepodge of fanatics who happen to hold some grudge against the United States. Rather, they are motivated by an ideology calling for the imposition of force, the imposition of the tenets of Islam. Iran is the wellspring of modern Islamic totalitarianism. Instead, we did a half job, just as we've done regularly in the past. We destroyed much of Iran's nuclear capacity, but we have allowed its government to remain in power. We not only refrained from eradicating our enemy, we even prevented a very willing Israel from doing that for us. Thus, the Iranians now loudly proclaim that they have achieved victory, that they have confronted the great Satan and emerged intact. Yes, America and the world are better off with a non-nuclear Iran, however long that may last. But an Islamist Iran remains a danger that is not eliminated simply by eliminating its nukes.
Atlas Shrugged is a declaration of independence, a second declaration of independence, and not just because of the way it offers that positive moral alternative, but also because of the way it has a deep understanding of the psychology of what we are up against. We're up against a lot. How do we break free from it? How do we not just, and I say we for a reason, because it's not just about encouraging other people to break free from it. It's about having the courage to break free from it ourselves. Because altruism's been around for 2,000 years. Judeo-Christian morality has had an effect everywhere on everybody. It is virtually impossible to escape its influence, even if you're a defender of America, of individualism, even if you're a fan of Ayn Rand. That's the real mind virus that we need to be inoculated against. But if we really have virtue, shouldn't we want the world to know about that? Isn't self-esteem precisely recognizing the virtue that we do have, and in appropriate circumstances, telling other people about that?
If it's a real conceptual value that you formed yourself, you've come up with it as an idea of something to pursue because you understand how it can benefit your life. But that requires knowledge. Having this idea, whether it's a new one you've come up with or maybe you've learned it from someone else, requires knowing things. It requires knowing that you can achieve it, and indeed how you can achieve it, and what good it is, how it can benefit you. If you don't know one of these things, about something, you don't have a value. Or if you don't have some, maybe it's short of knowledge, idea, how can I achieve it? If something appeals to you in some way, seems to you good, but you have no idea of anything you can do towards it to make it or get it, that thing is not a value. It's what Dagny describes to herself at one point in Atlas Shrugged as tinsel of futility. The attitude most people have towards stars, which they see as their ideals, safely distant and requiring no action of you. Our aims aren't sort of there for us to identify. They're like we're aiming at something determinately and we have to figure out what it is. Rather, aim is something you create and adjust. You make your own damn path. There aren't preset paths through the wilderness. You've got a tundra and a machete. Or if that's too malevolent universe because it makes it seem like it's too hard, you have a wide open field. There's not some preset ways for you to go. You're a human being, which means that you value conceptually, which means that you have a nature, you have certain fundamental needs that you have, but it's up to you to come up with new ways to satisfy them, and those ways are your values.